Today on Locked On Rockies, blown opportunity, missed chances. All sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 16th day of August in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And bringing you your daily Rockies talk here for about 3 seasons on the Rockies podcast feeds of Locked On. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and bringing your passion, your takes, your love for the Colorado Rockies here to the channel on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and more. Check it all out there and on your favorite streaming service. You can also find us on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app alongside your Colorado Rockies play-by-play action show. Don't miss out. Today on the show, recapping a really disappointing series. I mean, as you can kind of tell, the deflate setting in my voice here again, as the Rockies just can't clutch up this year. And even after showing signs of it in these series, it's just this series, especially the final 2 ball games, prime examples of the Rockies just unable to shut the door, unable to build a lot of momentum and maintain it. And I'll go into a deeper bit of what I mean by that coming up here in the show. We'll talk about some of the good stuff that happened in this series, including the fact that the Rockies were able to chase after a bad Arizona Diamondbacks bullpen. And Nolan Jones is continuing to impress. He's continuing to be someone to be excited about, and he's continuing to be a silver lining in another tough stretch and another tough part of the season, and what's going to go down as one of the worst seasons of Colorado Rockies baseball that we've ever seen. And I don't want to be too down on it, but this series sets that tone. This is a team that is experiencing growing pains, sure, but this is a team that just as built right now, dealing with its injuries and dealing with its lack of starting pitching depth and dealing with regression from one of their best bullpen pieces in Daniel Bard. It just isn't a recipe for success, even when the Rockies have set themselves up to be successful. I mean, it's really frustrating to see Lawrence be so good, but then games like last night happen. It's so frustrating for especially Austin Gomber to get some run production back and some backup, but has his walk problems. The Rockies just can't consistently put together solid stretches of baseball, especially of late. The Rockies have not gone on a more than 2-game winning streak here, and that goes back as far as, I mean, it's only happened twice, 3 times. The Rockies have won back-to-back games in the second half of the season. And when you go back, their longest winning streak of the first half of the season is only 4 games. And that takes you all the way back to late April into early May. This team, even when they do line up a couple of wins, do bring things together, have just gone through unbelievable stretches where they're losing close ball games. We talked about the Rockies being in ball games. That's good, but they're not capitalizing. They're not the ones that are coming out on top. They're not the ones that are delivering the final blow and able to close out the ball games even with their issues. This is a team that continues to step up in certain instances, but then when their backs are completely against the wall, they have been unable to handle that adversity and handle those parts of games. They have not been able to win and bounce back completely, even in their own home ballpark. And, you know, it is part of the learning process. It is, and there are things to point to and there's, you know, explanations and reasons, but it's just, it does get frustrating when this was a sweepable series for the Rockies at the end of the day. They had the lead, 2-run lead in the ninth inning in game number 2 after stealing the first game. Exactly what you were looking for in terms of snapping the losing streak, getting yourself back in order, and preparing for a home stretch where, you had 2 winnable series here with the White Sox on the way next. But instead, it's the inconsistencies. It's the hot and cold of the Rockies. It's oh man, Justin Lawrence is great, but then he's not great. Daniel Bard has had some stretches, but then he walks everybody and everything. Granted, the Rockies were already down before Daniel Bard comes into the game at that point, but still, it goes on top. Ryan McMahon, big day at the dish today, big day, but still not enough. Still not enough for the Rockies to really get in there and feel like that's a big challenge that we're not getting from all of this young Rockies guy. We're seeing the flashes, but we're still not we're not seeing this young team overcome all of the mistakes, all of the shortcomings of this team yet. So it still shows that there's time, that there's much growing to do. But the Rockies just have not put together a complete 9 innings of baseball very often this season. And they haven't been able to do that over stretches of multiple games. And it's followed usually by losing streaks. Since the hot start into the second half of the season, the Rockies have only avoided a losing streak, or have only avoided back-to-back losses one time following a 2-game winning streak. They've gone on and just dropped multiple winning games. You're looking at these series here, especially as you're reflecting here on some of these series. That series in Washington, that series in Milwaukee before going there. So, yes, it's a high strength of schedule. The Rockies being a team that has one of the most difficult second half schedule in all of baseball. It's just a little bit frustrating because you feel a little bit more confident in this club, and you feel a little bit more confident that this team has the ability to outperform its record and outperform how it's been so far this season. But then series like this happen, and it just shows that the Rockies' weaknesses are still really glaring and really tough to deal with. Because this was a series that the Rockies needed to get back on track against the NL West. We were talking about a bad winning percentage and not being able to beat the Dodgers. Well, the Rockies haven't been able to beat the Diamondbacks, especially in this season. Let's talk about those numbers. Let's talk about some good things, however, because although this series has a frustrating tinge and taste left in the mouth, there was a lot to like about some performances, especially from young guys there. And there were some head-scratching moves again, especially as the Rockies were approaching their pinch hitting in the last game of the series. We're going to talk about that and more coming up in segment number 2 of today's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast. But before we do that, Locked On Rockies fans, got to tell you about the new app called Bunches. Bunches is a new app built just for sports fans where you can chat sports in real time. You'll see in our show notes, you'll see it on the podcast feeds and on the YouTube, that there's going to be a link that you can join the app or go to the App Store on the Apple App Store and download Bunches now. I'm telling you, you're going to love the conversations with other Locked On sports fans. It's the place where sports fans go to chat, and the Locked On MLB group chat is on Bunches right now. You can go there and connect with other baseball fans, chat your favorite team, and keep up with the latest MLB news. Have any questions or comments about today's episode? Chat about it in the Locked On MLB Bunch on Bunches. Chat about your team every day. Download the Bunches app today, and when you do, our friends at Bunches have featured the Locked On MLB Bunch in the Discover tab. You can also click the link in the description and show notes to join the Locked On MLB Bunch community, but you can also download the app on the Apple App Store just by searching Bunches right now. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service and on the SiriusXM app and SiriusXM. You can find your team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, and we thank you for making us your first listen of the day and checking us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. So, as frustrating as this series with the Diamondbacks was, because these games feel winnable, that's what's frustrating, especially given the flip-flop nature, given the issues, given the shortcomings with the Rockies and this, that, and the other thing. The game felt winnable because the Rockies are getting solid performances from key contributors here at the right times. The pitching is going to always be the issue for the Rockies this year, as it always has been the storyline. Absolutely. And I think this series, the pitching needs to be the one on display because the Rockies were able to generate some offense in this series, and especially headlined by, again, the impact of Brendan Rodgers and Charlie Blackmon, immediately recognized in today's game yet again. But the big thing, the big story, and the thing to continue to be excited about is Nolan Jones is showing that he is legit. The potential is legit, the power's legit, and the opportunity that he's been given, he is taking advantage of. Last 7 games, the line hasn't been great in terms of average, but the slugging up at 480, and over the last 30 games that feature 100 at-bats for him, the slugging is at 515, with the average sitting at 248 and an on-base percentage of 313. Over the last 30 games in that time, though, driven in 18 while drawing 10 walks, which is good. As we talked about over and over, the Rockies, everyone's strikeout numbers are high. We won't ignore those numbers, but it's not the focus there. Also in the last 30 games, 7 home runs. As Ryan McMahon crosses over and becomes the first Rocky to hit 20 home runs this season, if Nolan Jones can continue to find himself in a groove and continue to hit with power and continue to drive the ball well, there might be a chase for him to be able to get that and help the Rockies get more power that they desperately need. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that he can notch 8 more home runs here before the season is up, especially when you count that he's gotten 7 over the last 30. But the pitching is only going to be better. Nolan Jones it's being demonstrated consistently, and it's a benefit for him to be in the lineup. But he is the exact type of player that's going to benefit from being able to be in the lineup here every day. Getting a walk in today's game, getting the big home run there, another couple of RBI. And also, I mean, Ryan McMahon, this is what's so we talked about it a little bit, the streakiness. It's just, if we could get this Ryan McMahon all the time, if we could get this Ryan McMahon that's such a threat at the dish at some time, at some points, the Rockies offense would look different. And I think Rodgers coming back only makes those two better in Jones and McMahon. I mean, that makes you feel, that's a good little core you feel confident in of Rockies hitters when Mac is on. I mean, unfortunately, the streakiness is very tough with him, especially this year. But Brendan Rodgers, Nolan Jones, and Ryan McMahon being your big damage dealers is something to be definitely encouraged by. From those 3 players alone in this game, they score all of the runs for the Rockies in this one, scoring all 7. So good sign to see, good things to see that when these three are in the lineup together, they are adding a nice layer of depth in the middle of the lineup for the Rockies. And I guess I got a little thrown off by seeing Michael Tolia's name in the lineup, but then not in the lineup. But he was just moved to the bench. I guess there was just a lineup change. That was just throwing me off there for a second. But Nolan Jones not only impressing with the bat, but we saw again the arm strength is incredible as well. Playing a great corner outfield with cutting down. I can't remember who hit the ball, but getting that great outfield assist. I believe he is now tied for outfield assists as a rookie. I believe that came from our friend Evan Lang there from Purple Row. I'm going to double check on that, but it's. Those are great tools that you're super encouraged by Nolan Jones. And let's see here. I'm gonna just see if I can find this tweet. Nope. Okay. But this is it's really something that Nolan Jones continues to impress and continues to take steps in the right directions and add some Blake Street bombs back to the Blake Street Bombers as we continue to highlight some of the young guys that were good for the Rocks as well. Ezekiel Tovar not driving in runs today, but does have 3 hits. Jurickson Profar returns to the lineup as well. Not necessarily, I mean, got that. He plays such a fun game. Profar, it's a weird thing to look at because obviously the on the field product hasn't been great, but he does have a good presence and good fun presence about him on the field, and it does make he plays the type of ball that makes you smile, which is good. And man, Alan Trejo I thought was just missed it and was had some good ABs as well, drawing a couple of walks, but not enough to get anything going. Brenton Doyle getting a hit, going 1 for 4. Tough day for Austin Gomber as the earned runs piled up in the walks, something that he's been able to avoid of late, the walks. But Gomber visibly angry and frustrated about this one as well, because I think he knows that he missed out on some opportunities as well in this one. And I think it's that emotion is honestly good to still see. We've talked before about Gomber. We've talked about the emotion, about showing more emotion from Gomber this year. It does kind of still, it is a good reminder of the fact that these are professionals and they go out there and they do take the craft seriously, even in a series that is a season that's feeling more and more lost. It's a tough time to be feeling overall confident in the Rockies because, man, they just have not. The run differential has just been really, really bad, and it just shows that their pitching has so many issues that even when the offense does have a solid day, it's just not enough, and it's really disheartening to see how the Rockies have performed against the rest of the NL West this year, especially after that series, because now for sure the Rockies are just going to simply be dominated by 3/4 of the NL West. The only other team, the Rockies are 4-6 against the Padres this year, but now the Rockies are 2-7 against the Diamondbacks, 1-5 against the Giants, and 1-8 against the Dodgers. The NL West has just simply bullied the Rockies this entire time, and that's what's frustrating here, especially is it's these division games, these close division losses. They have a little bit more of a sting, as the Diamondbacks needed this series. The Diamondbacks needed to get a couple of wins, get themselves back above 500, because boy, has the second half not treated them well whatsoever. Man, it's hard to just kind of bring up a lot of it and it's just you circle back to, it's like, man, look at the offense pops off, they do this, it's the offense is on today, but the pitching it falls apart. The pitching is on, but the offense isn't there. That the lack of stringing together good baseball just continues to sink the Rockies. And looking ahead, as we're looking at the end of the season, it's really not unlikely to think the Rockies' last winnable series of the season is coming up this weekend. I mean, this team is 25 losses away from a franchise worst 100 losses. And to avoid those type of losses and to avoid making that type of history, you're going to have to be better against your division, because you still have to play Arizona one more time, San Francisco twice. You do have a series against San Diego, which might be a crucial point for San Diego at that point in the season. And then yet again, the Rockies have a finish off with a long stretch of Dodgers. Second to last series is a 4-game stretch against the Dodgers. Just in those games alone, I mean, there's your near 25 losses. So what can the Rockies take from this series? What do the Rockies need to do better? They just need to win the close ball games. They need to go back. They have to take the step forward to win to win the close ball games, to slam the door shut, to instill your confidence and your dominance against this team or a team. But the Rockies don't really have any dominance over anybody. Has Daniel Bard set a worrisome thought as we think in your brains, as we think of relievers and reliever extensions, as there's talk of Brent Suter extensions and things of that nature? Because the problem is, or is Daniel Bard a little bit of an outlier and a little bit different? We're going to talk about that coming up here in segment number 3. But before we do that, got to tell you about our friends at eBay Motors. eBay Motors, it's all about a championship team, and it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. That's how championship teams work. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Before we dive into some more unfortunate bummer news, I kind of wanted to bring up at least a little bit and lighten the mood of feeling good that the Rockies young guys perform in these series, are getting opportunities. But what the heck was Harold Castro doing getting that last AB? Brenton Doyle should be hitting there. It doesn't matter. Like, at this point, it doesn't, we don't need to see Harold Castro getting a pinch hit in that situation. We need to see Brenton Doyle come up and get another big late game home run like he did the night before. Give him the opportunity to break through the slumps. It's just fully embrace going with the young guys and doing that in these situations, because they got to get used to them. Because hopefully, when we're looking back on this season and this moment, we're saying, look, this is when look at these series where the Rockies had some opportunities. Look at these moments in the 2023 season where the Rockies went young, they had moments, and they fell short. Look at how much they've grown and come from there. It comes from giving them an opportunity, just like Brenton Doyle should have had in this ball game. So we got to stay a little positive. You got to stay encouraged by the performances you're seeing from some young guys. You got to be encouraged by the fact that the Rockies were able to string together hits in this series. The Rockies were able to do damage and go after a bad bullpen. There are things to be encouraged by. You just feel deflated by those last two losses because the Rockies had chances in both of them. And like we said, hopefully as we look forward and go forward, we see those opportunities as the Rockies have learned from them and have gotten better handling these situations. And hopefully we're not still talking about this as these guys get more and more experience. And maybe even as later on in this season, we're seeing the Rockies put together a better stretch of ball that we haven't seen very much this season, and since we haven't seen since the All-Star break and that start from there. So we'll see what happens. But the Rockies, unfortunately, have a tough situation dealing with Daniel Bard because, this is not the same guy anymore. It's the performances that we've seen, unfortunately, from Daniel Bard. It just seems like he has lost. The fight is on for Daniel Bard. He just hasn't been able to, just like with the Rockies as a whole, hasn't been able to be a guy to turn to in high leverage and big situations. I mean, he can handle it. He can still perform. He's had good moments, but it does just add to the tricky layer of how long do you commit to relievers? How long do you extend relievers, especially veteran relievers? And does this impact your philosophy and thought process when going after Brent Suter? Does it make you a little bit more nervous about investing in Justin Lawrence long term? Because you can see so many different change. I mean, season after season, things can change, but at the same time, if this year is an anomaly, right? I mean, if Daniel Bard still has some of his abilities, and I think we've already know that the Rockies haven't turned him to close games as much as they used to with Lawrence especially. Does what you've seen from Daniel Bard make you more hesitant, even though he's been someone that's been successful? Does it make you more hesitant to try to bring Suter back, even with how good Suter has been and how consistent Suter has been throughout his career? It's just kind of the complicated world of quality relief pitching is very, very, very tough. And I really can't sit here and say I don't think the Rockies have made a mistake with Daniel Bard or re-signing him or keeping him on this team, especially with some of the moments. But I think Daniel Bard does have a little bit with his, with the self-admitted mental fights that he fights. I think that does add a little bit layer of intrigue when you're evaluating Bard versus other relievers that haven't fought the same mental struggles to that severity. Obviously, everyone is fighting battles, but Daniel Bard being a person very open, honest about the mental side of the game being the biggest detractor and the biggest hurdle that he has to fight. So I think that factors in when you're discussing Daniel Bard. I don't know what. There's just I don't know what to say really, because it's fascinating the drop off. It's fascinating how quickly things change for Daniel Bard and for he's another player that just falls right into that the issues of so hot and cold, so inconsistent, and man, it just hasn't been something that can really make it. Just really makes it very convoluted and kind of makes me weary about extensions, long-term extensions, multi-year extensions for relievers. But the Rockies need good pitching in the bullpen. And Bard can be a good pitcher, still, still going a win above replacement here. His stats are probably going to dip a little bit after this last appearance. They haven't been all updated yet for him, but it's just, man, everything for Bard is just the strikeouts are down, the walks are up, the earned runs are up. Everything is up in less innings this year, and can you just count on that being a Daniel Bard thing, or is that it's trended down since 2021 too? Tough writing against the wall for a player that had MVP votes, did get an MVP vote in 2022, but still someone that I think the Rockies, it still wasn't a total miss. It's just now it really does make me scratch my head and wonder how much you want to commit to veteran relief pitchers, and especially doing something more than 1-2 year deals, because it does sound like the Rockies and Brent Suter are interested. So I don't know. I feel like I was kind of out there. I just feel my low energy after that game, after that series, I think. But we're going to be breaking things more down about Diamondbacks and Rockies coming up here with Millard Thomas the rest of the week, and some more baseball stuff with him. So don't miss out on that, and don't miss out on all of your Locked On Rockies talk. I didn't really land a lot of the points home today, I don't think, but that's all right. We still had a good pod today. We'll be better tomorrow as well. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day and bringing us your hot takes, your thoughts, your comments there on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for tuning in. Go check out the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs podcast. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.